Welcome to the Big Roofs podcast, the podcast where we talk to successful roofing business owners and industry leaders about how you can build a bigger, better, more profitable roofing business. Today's guest is Gavin Shenhav. Am I saying that right?
Yep, you got it, AJ.
All right,
Mhm.
perfect. Owner of Masterlyne Roofing in San Diego. Welcome to the show, Gavin.
Thank you very much.
Really excited to hear about your story and your unique insights. I know somewhat that there's some unique challenges to California when it comes to roofing. So really interested to hear that
hmm
from you as
Yeah,
well.
there's some different barriers to entry here for sure compared to some other places.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we can definitely dig into that. Let's get started with I would love to just hear your story as far as how you got into roofing and maybe you got into working for yourself to begin with as well. I don't know if this is your first business or if you've done other stuff as well.
I had a couple other joint ventures before. So I guess I kind of got into this industry because of sales. My first sales job that I ever really like excelled at was like, hey, like I think I'm actually good at this was Cutco. Um, I was everyone that I sat with was pretty much buying, but it was hard to get referrals. Um, so, but I liked it. I actually enjoyed the process. I ended up studying business and psychology in college. And at that time, I was putting myself through school playing online poker, mostly online poker tournaments. And they basically what happened was there was some legislation which made poker illegal in the United States, and almost all my money was online and it all got frozen. So yeah, I was in a situation where I was like, okay, I gotta get a job. I gotta figure something out. And I was selling cars. Worked for a Ford dealership and then a BMW dealership. And especially in a small town, I was up in Monterey at that time. You can't really make any money doing that, But I was in 20s. It wasn't really like a huge deal. I ended up moving to LA. I've lived most of my life in San Diego. Um, so I wanted to kind of be back in Southern California. I I ended up, kind of classic story that you hear a lot of people have the same story. I was looking for something where I could make some more money, and I saw a post for construction sales, and I was like, well, I know a little bit about construction. My parents, did work on their own houses, and my older stepbrother built a house off grid using reclaimed materials from where they built the B2s in LA. So I had a little bit of experience doing construction and like that kind of stuff. And when I first got into it, um, I was a horrible salesperson. And basically, if someone said I need to think about it or whatever it was, I was like, okay, no problem. And I just always believed them. I didn't understand. It was kind of like more of a reflex objection. And most of the companies that I've worked for are a little bit different. And here in this Southern California area, there's kind of like two different types, well, maybe a few different types, but a lot of one call close companies. So when I worked for as a sales rep for other companies, like if you don't sell it on that first visit, they'll just send a manager out or somebody else and they'll sell it. Like it's not like the sales rep doesn't own the lead just because they went out to the appointment and gave an estimate. So it was tough. I was pretty much about to quit at the first company I was at, and I ended up selling a heat reflective paint job. I basically put my boss at the time on speakerphone, and he closed the deal for me over the phone, basically. And I was like, wow, like I just made as much money as I would make in a couple of weeks or a month doing a regular job, and that was it. I was kind of hooked at that point, and I was like, I got to figure this out because I knew I was terrible. Um, and it was kind of a weird thing. I actually, when I started there, the previous sales manager had just quit, and this was like a home remodeling company. So there's some companies that do almost everything, and then there's some companies that will specialize in like a heat reflective paint called Texcoat, which I still do, roofing and windows. And when the guys are new, they always give them the Texcoat leads, like the paint leads, essentially, because they generally have a higher profit margin, but they're also kind of harder to sell. And they give the roof leads, which is kind of non-discretionary spending, a little easier to close, right, to the more seasoned reps. So yeah, after that first sale, it kind of put me on that path. I was driving for Lyft before work, after work, occasionally still playing poker live, making a little bit of money at the casinos, but then you don't sleep and not the healthiest lifestyle, you know. But yeah, that's kind of what got me into it. And from there, I actually ended up worked for a few different companies up in LA and met my wife up there. And we decided, you know what, like this is not really a place to raise kids. And so I ended up moving back to San Diego. And I had a couple of partners that were based out of LA. And I think you guys are super blessed. You seem to, from what I could see, you guys work great together and really like are always working to improve. And I love that. That's what attracted me to kind of like, join ProLine really was you guys. But what ended up happening with me and my experience with having business partners kind of for the first time at that point was they were making my job harder. Like sometimes even like basics, like getting someone on the phone with a credit card to pay for materials to start a job was a challenge. And for me, I wanted to give customers a really good experience and have good communication and get good reviews. Because to me, it's like if you don't have good reviews, like you're just going to start over again, right? You want to build something long term there. And we didn't share the same ethics really and the same vision. And the final straw was when I found out that one of the owners, who was the contractor basically, he was making the invoices for one of our subs. And I was looking over, which I didn't know. I never would have agreed to that. It was crazy to me. But the other business partner knew, and the accountant knew, and they were like, "Oh, well, we just trust, right?" You always have to have checks and balances in a business. To any of you new guys out there, trust everybody, but always have checks and balances and systems in place that keep everybody, accountable. And basically, he was making invoices with extra cost on them that didn't exist and embezzling money out of the company. So at that point, I was like, I have to figure out something on my own. So I wasn't really in the financial position to do that. But thankfully, I had enough of an understanding at that point that what profit kind of needed to be. And just was super fortunate that it ended up working. And the market here for roofing in San Diego's, very good. There's a lot of houses built in the 60s and 70s. And it's been 2 years now with Masterlyne. And so far, it's going well. We've been improving and 5 stars on Google so far, not a ton of reviews, but little by little getting there and providing good customer experience, good quality work. And yeah, just definitely come a long way from that, running that job that I found from the ad on Craigslist and just continually trying to improve from there. So that's kind of the short version of the story. Maybe it was long, but
You could
good.
you share a story with lots of people, including me. So
Mhm.
it's a very relatable story for a lot of people in the roofing space. You
Yeah.
just told a lot of my story too. So and I've heard the same thing: embezzlement, bad
Mhm.
partnerships,
Yeah.
uh, don't align with all kinds of stuff. So
Mhm.
it's a we could chat for a long time about just that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is there not, was there no kind of recourse in that situation where you have a partner that's embezzling like that? Is that not illegal? Like since
Sure, it
he's the
is.
owner?
It is, but the reality is like white collar crimes don't get prosecuted, and even if you get a settlement in your favor, you're not going to collect the money.
No, you're gonna
Um,
pay attorney's fees. It'll
yeah,
be a long, drawn out process. Well, over a year. It's like everybody always has the answer, but it has to be so much money for it to actually
Really
even
makes
come
sense.
close to being worth fighting it.
right. Yeah, I mean, it was in the six figures. I mean, it was significant. And the other thing is like the ability to pay. Like even if they do even have the money, like you're going to agree to some weird settlement, but it's hard to get. Oh no, sorry guys, let me fix this.
Oh, you're good.
I got a new car and I didn't bring the key I didn't switch the key over from the office. So my apologies here.
You're good.
Um, yeah, but basically, yeah, I just, I have some family members who are lawyers, etc. And they just said, it's very unfortunate, it's terrible. It's definitely wrong what happened, but you're better off walking away. And I'd had a previous experience for another company that I worked with, and I ended up leaving, and they owed me some, quite a bit of commissions when I left, and then they started paying me about like half the commissions of what I was owed, and then just not paying me at all. So me and two other sales reps who had left ended up having no choice but to have a lawsuit against them because they just weren't paying us for money that we'd earned. And it took about a year to figure everything out. We ended up settling and ended up getting back what I was owed, but it was not worth it. because it was so stressful and just so draining that whole like year process, like it took away from going out and selling and just kind of moving forward myself. So it wasn't worth it. In retrospect, I would have been better off just focusing on selling and doing something else, and I would have made way more money. So when this happened, I kind of like considered it, not so much, I kind of felt like, okay, well, he should be held accountable for what he did. So we can't do it to someone else too. Like I kind of felt like I have some responsibility for that. But yeah, a family member who's like a former district attorney, and like she's like, you could try going to like a special crimes division and like filing a report and then like doing this and that. It just sounded like it wouldn't go anywhere and it would never get the money. So, is what it is. But at the end of the day, like it really hasn't affected my life. And, what are you going to do? It's just unfortunate. And in business, there's just, it's not just in construction, it's just in life. There's some people that, aren't ethical. So if you're getting into business with someone, make sure that everything is 100% clear in writing, that you have an accountant that has full transparency to everything. You're seeing all the invoices, all your costs, trust, definitely I've got to trust them 100%, but have those systems in place to, make sure that everything's as it should be.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's also good. Just checks and balances, like you said before, is just a really, really wise business decision. You should spend money on personnel for at least 2 different checks and balances for your money. Like, so Tisha has been with me since 2019. She's awesome. But not just like the ability to trust her, which I do, but just help her make sure everything is, from a bookkeeping perspective, is accurate and we're getting all the deductions we need. But then also, like, she's able to understand our business and she's bought into our business more than like a CPA. Like we've been through a couple CPAs. They care, and we have a really good one now. But going back and forth between those two entities, they're not associated at all together. A lot of people have CPAs that have the bookkeeper built in. Right. I've been through that too. That is not the wisest decision. You should have it separated, because of that exact checks and balances. Like if that bookkeeper relies on the CPA for their personal income, they have no incentive to challenge the CPA. In fact, they're discouraged to challenge the CPA because they're like, they made me, a subordinate of the CPA. And then I've been through a couple of situations like that, and it's been really helpful to separate the two. It costs more, but it's definitely worth it for me because I have more peace of mind and real checks and balances as it really. Obviously, I need to know my own numbers too. I need to know the profit margins and everything like ProLine does, but like it's really, really helpful to separate those 2 different roles.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes total sense. Trust is so important, but I think where people get confused when it comes to trust is that they think that trust means not having transparency in prior agreements, when I'd say it's very much the opposite. A core piece of real true trust is the transparency and having going into things where there's where everyone's on the same page. Like that's a core piece of trust, is like having that. And so people kind of look at it backwards when people are like, "Oh, it's so important to trust everyone." They look at it kind of like, "Oh, if you're trusting, then you don't do that. You don't need to have transparency, right?" And I think it's kind of the opposite in a way.
Yeah, I agree.
This is your story is very familiar, but there's definitely some unique elements here to dive into. One of them is the online poker. Was it Texas? What do you prefer? What's your game?
Yeah, so it was mostly No Limit Texas Hold'em.
Nice.
And I was actually a part of a team at one point, and that was where I found the most success. And I think that's where the most equity probably still is playing tournaments. So you would start 6 to 10 tournaments at the same time on like a Sunday morning. And if you got to like a final table, you could be playing like 13 hours. Like that wasn't uncommon, but you could buy in for like $10 and win several thousand too. I mean, that wasn't typical, right? You're not going to like make a final table all the time, but I think I was cashing like 28% of the time and was like winning like 3% of the time. And I was a part of a team where there were some guys who were making 7 figures a year playing online poker tournaments, and we'd record ourselves And we also used software that would track all of our stats. So they'd say, okay, now you're getting towards the end of the tournament. Everybody's getting really tight. You should be opening your range to X, Y, and Z. You know, that spot where you folded king eight offsuit, you know, you had 12 big blinds. You should have gone all in to pick up the, you know, the extra, you know, money that
was on the table.
money, right? The tournament that's out there. But yeah, I loved it. It was fun, you know, for a young single guy. Like it was cool. Yeah, and I played at the casinos too sometimes, you know, the cash games. But some of those I think there's some shady stuff that go on, especially in, you know, small towns and privately owned card rooms and home games. You see some weird stuff where one of the owners like wins the jackpot and weird things, you know.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of playing around with stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's super fun. I never got to the point where I was doing it for cash, but I spent a lot of time playing like small tournaments, like tournaments in like the restaurants and stuff like that. I'm sure you're familiar with those. And I never did online, but it was just so much fun. I love Texas. Texas Hold'em. No limit. Texas Hold'em. It's a good time.
Yeah.
It's a good time.
Yeah.
So, but cash is definitely very different from tournament play. Like even assuming everyone's like following the rules, it's such a different vibe of that flow.
Yeah, like with a cash game, you can have like a lot of holes in your game, right? Even, but if you're very, very good at reading people, and you can just look at somebody and just be like, this dude's bluffing, you know, or if this person's willing to fold a big hand, if I'm willing to put all the chips in the middle, like they're just too tight. If you can make those reads, the other stuff doesn't matter as much. Whereas online, if you have a weakness, a lot of the other good players are tracking all the stats too, and it's very easy to get exploited more so than you know than live. Yeah, they're completely different. And the speed is different too, especially playing online. You can play a bunch of games at once. I remember playing in the card room and being like, can I play two tables that are next to each other? Because I'm used to playing so many at once. And I played tight, generally pre-flop. You know, back then you could wait for good hands, you know, especially at the card room, and wait for, you know, a set or, you know, three of a kind or whatever. And there's someone who's going to not want to fold a lot of the time.
Yeah.
You know, whereas online it's a little different there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a lot more more technical and fast paced.
But I've thought about that and like, well, like how did that affect what I do now? And I'm glad that I had that experience because it gave me a tolerance for losing a lot of money sometimes, you know, and you deal with that in business. You have a job that goes wrong. Or, you put up a tarp and it leaks anyway. We had a situation last year where we bought a tarp with holes in it and put it on like at night in the dark. We didn't see it. So, you know, a lot of those things will happen if you know doing enough work. It's just a matter of time, and that's just part of doing business. And I think that helped getting that kind of desensitized to winning and losing money playing poker. And then the bankroll management thing too. You know, there's a lot of topics, you know, in the roofing community here about guys like, don't spend all your money on X, Y, and Z. Like just because you sell a $20,000 roof, like you're not getting $20,000, right? So for me, like with poker, it's bankroll management. With a business, I've been just as frugal as possible for the last couple of years and just try and keep as much money in the business as possible. And I think that was kind of something that I learned from poker too. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's critical to stay lean.
Yeah.
So it's been this is, you know, ProLine's my like third or fourth business, but it's hard. It's really hard sometimes, especially when you're getting into a new type of business that you haven't previously gotten into, and it takes some real discipline to stay frugal instead of just, it's real tempting just to be like, oh, I need that, especially when people are telling you that's what you need. That's the thing. I'm recently learning this lesson. I won't get into too much detail, but I realized I was taking advice from people who had a lot of interest in me spending money on things. So yeah, it's something to be really careful of, because you know people are out here. Everybody wants to tell you that you got to spend money on XYZ thing, but you got to be careful. You got to weigh. You got to question it, and you got to weigh that ROI.
That's right. Yeah, no, I think it's pretty cool that you guys are doing a lot of the stuff yourselves. When I first joined, joined ProLine, and I hopped in the chat late at night, and you popped on, AJ. I was like super stoked. I was like, oh, like, hey, like I know this guy from the videos. He's in here. Like, this is really cool. And just to kind of go a little bit on a tangent here, like you guys have really, really exceeded my expectations on a CRM. So basically, I was between you guys and the big roofing CRM, and the thing that won me over was really like your YouTube videos really made a difference, because like I felt like, okay, this is a small team, this is new for them, but they seem like they're hustling, they want to figure stuff out. Like this is gonna be an excellent way to go if it's not already. And yeah, in every way you guys have exceeded my expectations. I remember there was one night where I was trying to figure out something on my proposals. If you're gonna hop on with ProLine, setting up your templates, that's kind of one of the first big stages of it. And I hopped on with you, AJ, and I was like, hey, like, how do we do X, Y, and Z? Like, can we do it this way? And you were like, I don't see a reason not to. Give me a few minutes. And you pushed through an update like right then. And I was like, this is amazing. Like, if this was like a big company, they'd be communicating to someone, on the other side of the world. Let's
put a ticket in, and let's wait a couple of weeks, maybe a month, maybe a year. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
What's it called? The roadmap. I love the roadmap. I feel like AJ specifically has always been making that roadmap like a tiny little back alley. Just shoot back down there to get it done. Your story is not alone. There's lots of stories like that where we have started this thinking about our customers like we should as a roofing contractors. If you think about your customers, then good things happen. Like if you're not focused on like big marketing strategies or spending money on branding a certain thing or like being parts of different groups, that doesn't help our contractor customers. And so I think that's your story is one of many. And so I appreciate that, because I am the same way at Peach State Roofing. I'm like, this is awesome. We give feedback, and then my team's like, this is amazing. Like my team loves it too, because they're like, this is what we needed.
Yeah.
We didn't have to wait 6 months for it.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that a lot. Trying to maintain that speed for sure. We're getting right now. We got some massive features that we're working on. So it has bogged us down. It's harder to like step away and work on the small stuff here or there as quickly. But we're gonna always try to maintain that speed. And everything that we've done fundamentally and how we've set up ProLine is set up for speed, set up for the ability to quickly make changes, quickly fix bugs. And that is something that I plan to avoid us ever losing. As I build out our dev team and stuff like that, just in the way everything is structured, we're going for speed. So we'll keep that.
Yeah, well, you guys are doing awesome. So whatever you're doing, just stay on that path. And it's already, it's already, I feel like I'm only using like the tip of the iceberg in terms of what we can do in ProLine. I've got a couple small kids, so my time is super limited, but you can do everything from start to finish in there. And we're, in the automations, I'm excited to get into that. I know that's kind of something you're passionate about, AJ. So I'm excited to really kind of dive into that stuff more and have that start to work for us. But yeah, I've had a couple experiences where I had a customer that, just couldn't get any traction with. And I'd tell them like, hey, can I just send you an updated proposal? And maybe throw in something like, hey, I might be able to do a small discount. Can I send you a new proposal? And, we get a hold of them there and say, sure, why not? And put together, very, very professional looking proposal. And I could see when they look at it. That's a huge feature too, to know that they opened it. And I think I told you about this, AJ. I had some customers that were looking at it over and over again. I was like, I gotta figure out how to close this deal, because they're wanting to move forward, or they wouldn't be keeping looking at it. Maybe they're shopping or whatever it is. And some of those bids, I haven't been the lowest cost. Like I've had some that are kind of in the ballpark. And I really think having that proposal that's that much more professional was the difference maker. I really do. I was just using something really basic before, where it just had the line items on it and the price, and it doesn't tell you anything about the company. You don't really know much about the materials. Sure, you could text that to a customer, but it's not the same thing. Having everything in one place, and it just keeps selling for you after you leave. Because if you go out and visit a homeowner, they're not going to retain a lot of what you're saying. And they're probably going to mix you up with another roofer too. If they're getting multiple estimates and they're talking to a bunch of people, they're not going to remember that. But if you give them an estimate that has all that stuff in there and it's the best estimate, you're probably going to get them back to the table to negotiate at least, because you're probably the nicest quote by far that they're going to get. So,
No, absolutely. That is good to hear. We always love when people come in and can make some extra sales right off the bat in one way or another, whether by resending the proposals. Because I imagine these were people that you had previously sent proposals before using ProLine, and then you're resending the ProLine proposal. Or
so this is embarrassing, but I feel like it is important to share this stuff because it's going to help other people. Yeah. We were putting stuff on paper. So basically using a legal pad, I'd write out the details. We do have, a pretty nice business card that does have a spot on the back where we can write in the price, etc. for them. So it's better than just the blank piece of paper, but let's be fair, it's not very professional. Sometimes people would ask for, send me something with all the line items, etc. And I was using, I don't think it's a competitor, so I hope it's okay I'm bringing it up, but is it Roof Scope? They have something that you can basically make proposals in there, but it's very challenging process. You're back and forth in different screens, changing things. When someone wanted that, I was like, oh man, I'm feeling like they're just saying it to get rid of me, and I'm gonna put all this time into this thing. I'm gonna have to be doing it up at night. That's the only extra time I have to basically do those things the way things are now. And with ProLine, it's completely different. Everything's already set up. I just put my measurements in and I have my number, and I got to plug in a picture of their house, for that really beautiful cover page, and just, a couple other tweaks here and there. And it's actually fun. I actually enjoy doing it. I'll go back, I'll look through it, I'll edit it again. And I'm like, they're going to get this thing and they're going to love it. So, it's a completely different feeling when I'm leaving a house and I didn't sell it right there. I feel like, okay, hey, I've still got a really solid shot.
Yeah.
Totally agree. I actually just told a story 2 hours ago, but we have this customer and their referral, they saw the referral was just from Clay, my Savannah area owner. He's just wearing a hoodie. It was a guy, another soccer coach at school, and saw it. We went out there and did the inspection. The proposal was he was sending us the competitors' proposals, and we never asked for that. We never even insinuate it. That's just not what we do. But he felt the need to do that. The customer did. And it was just crazy to me to see one page, and these are pretty large companies with wrap trucks in multiple states, and they have reviews. They're silver pledge JF, and here's 12 line items, and what does that mean? A homeowner doesn't understand what that means.
No,
and I know that we're doing a podcast that people all over the country listen to. You're in California, I'm in Georgia. I know prices are different, but this will at least give you an idea, because I hear these numbers in Texas too. So they were selling roofs for less than $315 a square. They're it was wild. I was like, how are they doing this?
Yeah,
and they're losing money. They are. This is a big company. They're losing. There's no way they're making money. They either losing money on the job, or they're asking for a big change order at the end for some reason. That's the one, the roofing side. And we're at 500 a square, which is way high for Georgia. That's way high. Way high.
Oh.
I'm just saying that so people understand the difference. A lot of people in Georgia are still selling 400, 405, 410. We don't sell per square, but I want people to understand the difference in prices. When a customer sees a simple single page and they're like, they see a price that's thousands of dollars less than our price. And he got four estimates from 4 different companies that have a bunch of 5-star reviews. We were one of them. He got a price from like his buddy who was like texting him the price, which happened to be our price too. He keeps coming back to us, and this is an insurance job. We don't do a bunch of insurance work. We treat insurance like retail, so that doesn't really matter. But he chose us to go see the adjuster in 2 days. And I firmly believe exactly the same thing you're saying, is that the reason he's giving us the shot versus these other companies is because our proposal is very professional.
Yeah.
It's extremely it describes who we are. It describes why we're different. It describes the complete roof systems and shows pictures and shows optional upgrades. Like we do lifetime pipe boots as an optional upgrade. We do gutters and gutter guards. Like it's all very clear, showing the customer what they're getting, and not just the cover page, which is very nice. It's telling their story, but we just did it. It's really important if you have a proposal. It needs to have an inspection report built in. We already send company cam reports the same day, but if we can include it in the proposal and say, hey, you need to do ice and water shield in this valley, and it's going to be right next to this boot. And we're going to do ice and water shield around this boot. And this is the trim right here. We're going to replace the cedar siding here. If you can show that, you're proving that you're holding yourself accountable to do these things. And the customer doesn't wonder, are they really going to do this? Like, putting a line item saying we're going to replace the siding is different than showing 3 pictures of the exact spots you're going to be replacing. Yeah. It's a really, really important thing that I'm thankful that ProLine has built, because it is, I mean, we're talking $13,000 to $21,000. That's a big, for any homeowner, it's a big difference in price. And they're wondering, why in the world is this company $21,000 and this company $13,000? And so if you want to keep your promises as a roofing contractor to your crew, if you want to keep your promises to your suppliers, to your sales reps, and to your customers to actually provide the warranties and stand behind your work, you have to have profit. Like you have to. You can't you can't lose money. You can't. And we're not even doing crazy profit. Like after it's like 32, 33% gross profit. Like it's not even crazy. So to your point, the beautiful proposal is nice to look at, but it actually helps the customer understand why we're different. And in ProLine, I love the button. The one button I love to push in ProLine is resend. So if they have reached out, you can see that they've looked at it, and then the next day they don't respond. You just click resend to move it to the top of their email and their text. They're able to click on it again. Like that's a really, really fun thing for me, because I'm like, I want to follow up with them, but I'm just going to resend the quote and say, hey, I just resend the quote. And it's just staying on top of mind. They want to remember Peach State Roofing. They've got these other 4 companies out there with letters. And I think that's the future of roofing sales is having that extremely good experience using technology and constantly staying top of mind using this tool.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. The talking about technology, we need to get you on, make sure you get on these automations as well. Do you have anything set up for reviews right now?
I don't. I've kind of found that like a lot of times, like if it's like an in-person thing, what I'll do is I'll just be like, hey, go to your Google Maps, because they're usually already signed in there if they have a Gmail. Here's our link. I'm going to leave you to put on with what you want. Here's a couple of pictures. Something that I've really enjoyed there with sharing pictures with homeowners is flying a drone. For anybody out there who's on the fence about that, super fun, totally worth it. You get some angles you'd never get otherwise. In terms of the reviews, I just, leave them there to kind of put it in. Otherwise, what ends up happening is a lot of times you just never get it. Like you call them, you text them, they always say that they're going to do it. And we actually work that into our process a little bit, the whole like review thing. But it's tough. I don't know why it's so tough. Like for me, like if I have a good experience, like I'll go out of my way to put on a review. I like doing it. But for some reason, maybe people like feel self-conscious of their grammar, just being out there or whatever it is. But yeah, usually when
Thanks.
but I'd be stoked to try that out with some, text and email campaigns, and you got some pretty solid scripts to work with too to try it out. Maybe we can get some from old customers or something. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people have seen around like a 30% success rate on
Wow.
getting reviews from that campaign,
Yeah.
those campaigns that we have set up. And
Mhm.
one thing for you, because I love how you've worked it into your process, and you don't want to be asking for reviews from someone that already left them. So you can also filter that out with a tag. By default, we usually have the blacklist tag built in, but you can also add
Okay.
a tag for like left review. And then if you add that
Hmm.
to the project when they leave the
Mhm.
review, then that
Mhm.
won't ask them at the end. So there's like ways
Okay.
you can filter that out. Cause yeah, you don't want to like stop doing, because it sounds like that's working really well, like asking right then and there. But if you can send the people that you don't for one reason or another get the review there,
Mhm.
if you can send them
Right.
into a campaign, you might get a few more.
Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, we can figure that out. We'll talk about that. One thing I wanted to ask you, so you were talking about early on in your sales career, talking about objections and how
Mhm.
it was real stressful getting like overcoming objections. And I feel like this is something that
Mhm.
a lot of salespeople struggle with. Just a fun fact about me, I've done a lot of things, and a lot of them have been technical, but I actually did door-to-door sales at one point. So I have somewhat of a sales background as well.
Mhm.
And I struggled with objections. I got where I could kind of overcome them to a certain extent, but objections are very tough, especially if you're not. I feel like some people are naturally wired where they're totally like shameless with it, but if you're not naturally wired that way,
Mhm.
it's really challenging. What is your
Mhm.
advice to a sales rep that's struggling with overcoming objections?
I mean, the first thing you have to do is kind of understand your process, and maybe like it's almost too late when you get to that point, really.
Mm,
So like when I first got into sales, I felt like, why is this guy who's on the sales team such a good closer? Um, and this guy's not, or why am I not? Like I feel like people really like me, like I have good rapport with them, but I'm not closing the way that I should be. Like they feel too comfortable telling me no, or telling me they'll call me back, or whatever the objection is. And I kind of realized, so there was a guy, his name's David, and he was the top rep at the company that I worked for the longest as a sales rep. And they just fed him roofing leads. Like he'd just be out running, and those were the ones that had the highest close percentage, right? And everyone else hated him for it. And I was like, I want to be friends with this guy. He seems super cool, And we ended up becoming friends, and he was stoked that I wanted to learn from him. I was like, well, of course you're getting the most leads. Like you're selling the most. Of course, that only makes sense. So I think because of that, we kind of bonded a little bit. He's like, yeah, exactly. Like, so he was really meticulous. So he had an iPad. He was taking pictures with his iPhone, transferring them to the iPad, going up on the roofs, looking in the attics, doing a very thorough inspection. And he had like basically a script. It was the same almost every single time. He would talk about, first you have to have the urgency, right? Like if you don't have urgency and they don't know if they need a roof or not, um, if someone's like, I need a roof in 5 years, well, then you're not very likely to close. But you're going to get that. Sometimes you go out and tell them, hey, you got another 5 years. There's minimal amount of leakings. We could just seal up your vent pipes, and you're going to be good to go. But if there actually is urgency, you need to be able to communicate that to the homeowner in a professional way. And David was the best at that. And his process was really clean and methodical. And he basically just hit all the points: the urgency, the company, and the roofing system, the warranty, and him too. People just really liked him because he was very confident and direct. And I saw that, and what I did was I asked him if I could record him, and he was like, sure, go for it. I recorded his entire sales pitch, and then I played it back on my phone, and I wrote it out in a journal, word by word, kind of in my own words, right? Because it had to feel comfortable for me. So that's probably the biggest piece of sales, like that I've learned, is like if you're comfortable, the homeowner will be comfortable. Like it's really like all about energy, right? If you're carrying a positive energy and you're in the right mindset and everything like that, like you're a lot more likely to get the sale. Like I tell myself like a little mantra when I'm showing up to the house, like I'm like, okay, even if I'm stressed, whatever it is, I try and kind of hit that reset button. I'm like, I'm coming over here for a barbecue. Like I'm trying to come here and like make a friend and help someone. So coming back to to circle back to your question about the objections, if you hit all those other points first, if they're telling you, I need to think about it, or, I need to talk to my brother who lives in another state, who's a contractor, or whatever else it is, it's usually the price, especially like depending on culturally, like kind of who you're dealing with. But like here in the United States, like people aren't really comfortable negotiating. So what you kind of have to do is circle them back to negotiate with them and kind of explain what we're looking at and why, right? And kind of reaffirm those things. Okay, you're comfortable with me, you're comfortable with the company, and you like the roofing system. Is there anything that you'd be willing to compromise? Is there anything that I showed you that's maybe overkill? I definitely don't want to price myself out. And then just kind of, if they feel comfortable and they feel really good about the process, that's really what sells it. There's some people who just kind of have like a knack for influencing, like, and some people will just say yes to them because of their personality, even if the rest of their process is kind of bad. But that wasn't me. Like I was telling you, I was really bad at sales, so I had to have a really strong system and process in place. And it kind of keeps you from like getting lost. Like sometimes you can get lost in a conversation or something and go on a tangent. You're like, how do I regain control of this process here and kind of go through my steps? And I think I touched on what you're asking, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. That's amazing. That crushed it. Yeah, that's really good. I wish I could take that advice and just like send that back to my old self doing door to door. Like it would have helped me.
Yeah. Door to door is so hard because like, especially a lot of areas, they get a lot of people knocking on the door. Like you get so much negativity, like people slamming in the door in your face, yelling at you. I mean, it's really hard not to internalize that. I don't personally, knock on a lot of doors. Like I'll introduce myself to some neighbors if we have a job in progress, but I have a couple, team members that's their whole job is going out and knocking on doors, and it's brutal. I mean, it's very, very difficult. It takes a certain amount of mental strength and fortitude to be able to take that no and, that rejection essentially and hit the reset button and be positive with the next homeowner.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. It's really, really quite tough. Kind of follow up on that question, just more curiosity than anything. What would you say is the biggest differences? You said you did some car sales, right? Did I hear that right? Yeah. What is how different is it selling cars versus selling roofs?
Honestly, I was so bad at selling cars too. I don't know if I could even, like I think I just sold cars to people that I didn't talk out of it, that knew they wanted them already. Yeah, I would say most of the time with a car, it's like a luxury thing. Like most people that come in and look at a car, they have a car that already works. It's not an urgency thing. I mean, that's the amazing thing about being in the roofing business is a lot of times like somebody, if they need a roof, their house is at risk. I mean, it's a completely different thing. Having that urgency, it's like, okay, well, you don't have to do your roof with me, but you got to do it with somebody. So, you got someone here in front of you that you I think trust and like. So it's, try and figure out a way of making that work, So it's that's the biggest thing that makes it different, especially now with the way things are, like with the internet and everything else. Like I think it's tough doing auto sales. Yeah.
Definitely very different.
Yeah.
So kind of what we touched on at the very beginning, I want to circle back to talking about California specifically, because I believe California has some very unique laws around how you interact with like subcontractors and your crews, stuff like that. Do you want to cover that and how maybe you're tackling that for any other California contractors listening?
Yeah. So I mean, here in California, you have to have a license through the Contractor State License Board in order to operate. And in a lot of other states, you can just kind of go out and do the work if you know how to do it, or if you don't know how to do it. And also the way deposits work. I think for some reason in California, it's such a big market. Maybe there were a lot of bad actors here. I don't know why, but they're very, very strict. Like our paperwork is extremely strict. we legally only take $1,000 deposit or 10%, whichever one is less. And we can't take any other progress payments until we deliver material or start a project. So it's different. I know in other states, a 50% deposit is typical. And I actually don't think that that's a good thing for the homeowner or for the contractor, especially if it's a new contractor and they don't know how to budget their money. Like, it's a risk for everyone. But yeah, there's more of a barrier to entry in order to be a roofer. But you kind of get this like black market that happens here too. So, you'll get guys that, I'm sure that's probably true other places too, where a guy who works for a roofing company will do jobs on the side, too, and advertise on Craigslist or wherever else. And we compete against that. But the good thing too for a homeowner is that to have a license, you have to have all your workers' comp, all your insurance in place. So just in case something goes wrong, they're covered, right? Because if somebody gets hurt on your property and it's not somebody who has the proper insurances in place, the homeowner is, could definitely be held responsible for that. So yeah, definitely different here. So yeah, if you're,
it seems like that would in general, aside from the black market stuff, lead to a better quality, well, also maybe a little less competition than maybe in other states, but also higher quality experience for the homeowner.
Yeah, it kind of seems like there's a couple different types of roofing companies. So like there's companies that are kind of like home improvement companies, and they advertise and they do like multiple products. They tend to be more expensive. Then you've got like your roofing specialty companies, and then you have like these guys that just do things on the cheap. Kind of circling back to what you said, John, I had a kind of funny experience with seeing some other people's quotes. I had a customer that volunteered them. She'd had an issue with a bunch of shingles blowing off and was dealing with her insurance company. And I gave her an itemized quote. This was before ProLine, but even then it was by far the most professional. And I told her, like, if there's some questions about some line items or any other details, please reach out. And she did. She sent me the quotes from a couple other roofers that she got. They copied my quote, handwritten with spelling errors. Yeah, it was mind-boggling. So yeah, I mean, I would say, I don't know if it makes it so that there's less competition having those barriers to entry, but because I never really did the same thing in another state. But
yeah, ultimately in most states like Texas, I mean anywhere in the Midwest and the South, it is the Wild West. There is very little regulation. There's no accountability at all. You can just, if you're chucking a truck, you can make it happen. And you're not going to get any legal trouble. Ultimately, what I found is that it's the homeowners that drive this. They're voting for certain laws and they're choosing to be in those states on purpose for specific reasons. That in Georgia, if you had a license overnight, probably 90 to 95 of the companies would be gone. And that's initially what would happen because they just don't have the ability. They don't understand their numbers. I mean, it is way over 9 out of 10 have no idea how to price jobs. They do exactly what you said. They'll just they'll steal the ideas and the line items from other people. And they're like, this is what I'm supposed to say because my shingle manufacturer said I'm supposed to install these things. But they're not actually doing it. They don't know their costs. They're constantly, because I have a very good relationship with my suppliers. And they tell me you're the only one who never complains about prices because you understand what it actually costs. Like none of those. I mean, it for all practical purposes, the vast majority of roofing companies or roofing contractors, they don't know their numbers at all. And that's why in the first 2 years, the average life in Oklahoma is 11 months for a roofing company. That's the average. And because they have no idea. They get through the first insurance audit and then they realize they don't have enough. They didn't do the right things. Like they don't know the prices. They have no money. Like there is, obviously you can't stop the black market, but in general, I'm not super for regulation, but for I think for any specialty trade, there should be at least a license to actually like prove that and there should be certain things you have to do to show that you're doing the things you need to do in the best interest of your customers.
Are there permits, like roofing permits, where
Almost none. Almost none. I live in a little island, and I have a permit here.
Mhm.
It's pointless. I'm just giving the local government money. They don't actually inspect our jobs.
Right,
They just take a percentage of our revenue, which
right,
that frustrates me. I don't care if I have to pay for a permit, but at least look at it and understand what it is. But majority of the state, no permit.
yep.
So no,
But
no one checks. And in the places that do have permits of any kind, the building inspectors typically don't know how to roof, and they're not going to get on the roof.
right, right,
There's no real point to it anyway.
yeah, yeah. Something that's been really surprising to me, also. So here in San Diego, it doesn't rain a lot of years. Like it'll drizzle a few times during the year. So you get roofers putting like one layer, putting shingles on low slope roofs, like under 2 and 12 pitch, not putting two layers of underlayment on roofs that are 4 and 12 and under, and that's like the norm. Like they don't even know that that's what you're supposed to do, and they're like companies that have like big companies, that are installing wrong. And yeah, that's kind of been like shocking for me. One of the things that we've done that's been super helpful was we ended up getting certified through Malarkey Roofing Products, and that's been just awesome. Just such a good company to work with, and having a relationship with a manufacturer. So that's taught me a lot too. There were some things that I didn't know too. In all in all fairness, it's been a learning experience. But yeah, you see a lot of weird stuff with contractors. A little bit like the Wild West here too. In the city of San Diego, it doesn't require a roofing permit unless you're doing something structural or doing like a redeck, right? And pretty much everywhere else it does, but they don't check them anyway. It's just a money making thing, like you said.
Hmm.
They just sign off at the end of the job. Some of them will look at if there's wood replacement, they'll check that, at least see that it was done, and then do a final.
Yeah, makes sense. Crazy world. Crazy.
Mhm.
Not a lot of standards. Not a lot of standards. This is
Yeah.
something that it's been cool to be able to help some of our contractors, because everyone comes in at a different level. So we do have some contractors that come in and that are kind of just copying other people's quotes. And so they often will struggle a little bit with our quotes because they're like, why? I just want to put the number in. And I'm like, well, do you understand your cost? Like, do you like
Mhm.
maybe let's start by getting your price list in, like the yeah, so but I think that's one of the things that we're trying to navigate and trying to help, at least with how we're pre-populating out ProLine accounts, is like, here's a best practice. Like here's
Mhm.
the process, and we need to get better at documenting and creating content around that. But it's something that we're working on. Well, let's kind of wrap up here, but this has been great. Thank you so much, Gavin. This has been tons of fun. Usually we end with just a fun question. We'll ask, what are you looking forward to the most in the coming week?
I'm looking forward to taking my new truck off-roading. Um, Up until a couple days ago, I was driving a 2012 Toyota Prius, which I loved. It did me well. Got 52 miles per gallon when I would plug it in overnight. So it's been very good to me. I'm looking forward to going off roading. Very blessed. Ended up buying a Rivian truck. I was between this and a Raptor, a Ford Raptor, but that
Yeah.
wasn't going to fit, and my wife was not a fan of that, so we ended up settling on the Rivian, which now I'm super stoked on. So that's what I'm looking forward to.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
That's super cool. Yeah, good
Mhm.
stuff. John?
We have our first meeting with our new marketing PR company. I'm really excited. They are more than just marketing. Like she's actually a web designer by trade, and she also is like a Google specialist. So she's speaking my language. Like I'm not a tech person, but I know the importance of having someone on your team that's really good at that. And um she's also have 4 people that are going to work directly with us to develop videos, to increase our content on all the platforms. So we're going to really be able to differentiate ourselves on that aspect. And we just rebranded, so we need to actually let people know who we are, what makes us different. Are we confused? We don't want to confuse anybody. So I'm excited about that meeting this week. We're filming a whole lot. filming and planning and strategizing for this year.
It's awesome. We're narrowing in on finishing our Eagle View integration for ProLine. And with that, we're rebuilding the entire measurements and calculation system. We're going to pull over everything that everybody already has, so you won't lose anything. But we're rebuilding that whole thing to also make it easier to integrate with other measurement sources as well. So we're going to have a lot of more flexibility to connect out to other measurement sources. EagleView would be the first one that's directly integrated, but I'm very excited about that. It's going to be I think it's going to be a really good experience for everybody and really speed up that quoting process even more. I think we're going to have that done by the end of this week. If not, it'll be early next week, but we're making really good progress on it. So we'll see. But all right, so we'll wrap up there. Thank you, Gavin, again. This has been awesome. And yeah, talk to you more soon. And we'll see everybody next week.
Enjoyed it. Take care.
Bye, everybody.